You guys really know what you're talking about, and I suspect that what I'm going to talk about today should, I hope, be very obvious to a lot of you guys. When last week, actually 2 weeks ago, Kevin Systrom came and talked to my team, and one of the things that he said was he'd always thought that growth was about these big step changes, right? You go into a new country, you open up beyond like high schoolers or whatever it is, and one of the things that the growth team at Facebook does that he said he learned from us is that we focus on the details and that small wins really, really matter and aggregate to a big thing. So even though a lot of this is simple and obvious, I think it's hard. And hopefully with the experience that I have from working at Facebook, working at eBay, I actually paid for college doing paid search arbitrage and SEO and affiliates, so I really do come from the dark side of the force. With that experience, hopefully I can hammer home with you guys how important it is to focus on just a few things that really matter. So at the core of what matters most for growth, the truth of the matter is it's retention. You can't have a successful product if your users don't stick around. And so many products, and this is so obvious, right? So many products I've seen, and so many companies I've seen, and so many teams inside Facebook that I've worked with to help them drive growth, drive the growth of their product, promote their product, try to get people to install their app before it is ready for prime time, before it has product market fit. And the way we look at product market fit on the growth team at Facebook is this chart. On the x-axis is number of days from acquisition, number of days since you installed an app. On the y-axis is the percent of people who are monthly active. You could put daily active, you could put quarterly active, you could put whatever on it. I find monthly active works for pretty much everything. For the first 30 days after you've been acquired, shockingly, everyone is 30 days active. That makes sense, right? And then on day 31, a certain percent are active. Day 32, a certain percent are active. Day 33, a certain percent are active. And for Facebook, this is super easy. So I joined Facebook when we had 50 million users, 60 million users, and we were acquiring 100,000 plus users a day. So my data set was pretty good that I was getting the chance to work with, and we as a team got the chance to work with. Actually, a guy called Danny Ferrante was a huge part of how we got really good at understanding retention and growth for Facebook, who runs our data science team now. But for the advertiser products, which we were growing at the same time, that had only launched in September 2007. And I started working on growth for our Pages product and our advertiser product in November 2007. And for that product, we had 10,000, 20,000 people who'd ever signed up. So we had a very, very small data set. And we had to figure out what our lifetime value was going to be for our customers based on just 2 months, 3 months of data. And so what we did was this. We looked at everyone who had been on the system for 1 day, everyone who had been on the system for at least 2 days, everyone who had been on the system for at least 3 days, how many of them were active on their first day, how many of them were active on their second. Obviously up to 30 it was 100%. Then of everyone who had been on the system 31 days or longer, on their 31st day, what percent of those people were active on day 31? On their 32nd day, what percent of people who had registered 32 days ago or before were active on their 32nd day, and so on and so forth, out for as long as we had data. And the chart got very noisy out to the right-hand side, but we looked at 2 different data sets. Number one we looked at was the percent retained, so we could understand how many active advertisers we would have a year or 2 years out. And number 2, we looked at the revenue per customer per day, which produced a chart that looked like this as well. And in a really healthy business, it actually slopes up. And I've seen that in a number of the companies that I've advised because they bring more cities online. Think about Uber, right? I have nothing to do with Uber. So conceptually, though, when Uber only had a few cities, people could only drive cars in a few cities. You add on London, international travelers can take it. You add on Paris, international travelers can take it. So those same customers can buy in more places. So actually for them, the revenue goes up. For social businesses, sometimes you see the retention curve goes up because you have network effects. When your friends get onto Facebook, you are much more likely to come to Facebook every single day than when your friends are not on Facebook. When your friends or your mom or the most important people to you in your life are on WhatsApp or Messenger or WeChat or Line or Kakao or any of these applications, you're much more likely to use it every single day or every single month. And so often network effects drive it up. But at an absolute minimum, these things have to go flat. So using that analysis, we were able, for Facebook's advertising business with just 10, 20,000 active advertisers, to predict what the 1-year lifetime value of an advertiser was, and therefore how much money, how much inventory we had to spend to acquire those customers. This is very, very simple. Very simple. But the number of teams and companies that I've worked with who go out there and try and promote their product really hard while that blue line is still sloping towards the x-axis and at some point will intercept, and then are surprised when the growth of their company fails, churn overwhelms new user acquisition and resurrection, and their company starts shrinking, is tremendously high. So if there's one thing to take away from me, from what we on the Facebook growth team, Javi, Naomi, Danny, Chimoth, who founded the team, all of us have learned over the last 8 years of working on growth at Facebook and all the companies that Facebook has acquired and all the products that Facebook has built, is product market fit is the only thing that matters to growth. And the best way we have found to be able to measure product market fit is, do you end up with a retention line that asymptotes to a line parallel to the x-axis? Another thing that a lot of people talk to me about is like, okay, great, so you're at Facebook, you've got all this data, you've worked at all these different companies, like, how do I know what a good retention rate is for my industry? Because for eBay, the retention rate we needed was a very different level to the retention rate we needed for advertising for Facebook, to the retention rate we needed for Facebook, right? You look at a company like WhatsApp, and WhatsApp has over, I can't even remember what the last number we announced was. Messenger has over 600 million active users, and WhatsApp has hundreds of millions too. And you can actually take a look and say how many people have smartphones, how many people have Androids and iPhones in the world. Those numbers are out there. I don't know how many outside of China is, 1.3 billion, whatever. How many people are on the internet? 2.3 billion out of China. So you can say, if everyone with a smartphone has installed Facebook, if everyone with a smartphone has installed Messenger, what percentage of them were retained? And then you know the retention rate has to be better because we haven't got everyone to install Facebook or Messenger. And I love this as an example, and it's completely gratuitous, but I absolutely love it. There's this guy, Jeffrey Taylor. Have any of you heard of Jeffrey Taylor? That is a good sign. No one has seen me give this presentation before. You have. Jeffrey Taylor is awesome. He won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He was at a college called Trinity at Cambridge, but I forgive him for that. And he was an expert in various things, quantum physics specifically. And he did this analysis using this picture that was published in, I believe it was Life magazine that doesn't exist anymore, in 1950. And it's one of the Trinity nuclear bomb tests. And there's this thing in physics, and I studied physics, and then, as I say, transitioned to the dark side of the force and became a marketer. And it's called dimensional reasoning. And what you can do is look at any physical constant or force or whatever you're trying to analyze. And in this case, you're trying to analyze power, right? And that's force times the distance over which it's worked, the energy. So newtons times meters. And you can decompose something to the basic dimensions it comes from. And so newtons is kilograms times meters per second squared. And then you add in meters. And so the metrics that add up to power are kilograms meters squared seconds to the minus 2. So how do you get mass from this? The volume of the sphere is approximately equal to the mass, and so he throws in another meters cubed. So now you've got meters cubed times meters squared over seconds to the minus 2. So you've got meters to the 5 over seconds to the minus 2. And you have a time here, and you have a distance here. And just plugging in those metrics, he was able to do two things. One, find out the force of the US atomic bomb to within a factor of 2 using just a propaganda picture. And two, find out the ratio of the powers of the most powerful US and Russian atomic bombs because both countries were publishing their data. And that was the top secret in the world. Figuring out how well Facebook retains versus eBay retains versus all the other companies out there retain as all of us publish our numbers is a lot easier than that. And so it's very important, understand the retention of your product and then understand for the market that you're going after what good retention looks like. And that will put you in a place where you truly understand, do you have product market fit and how well positioned are you to compete in your market? And you can do it with very small amounts of data if you use that technique I showed on the first page. So product market fit matters. When I asked Keith and Ben yesterday what was probably the most valuable thing for this audience, they said it was, when do I think about building a growth team? How should I organize for growth? What should my company org structure look like to work on growth? The most important thing to know about how Mark did this at Facebook is he was the growth team for the first 50 to 100 million users. He was the growth team. We have this thing people have talked about in public called lockdown, where the company sort of basically stays in the office for a long period. We haven't had a company-wide lockdown for a long time, thank God. But the idea for lockdown came when Mark and Dustin wanted to go into a new college. And they realized they didn't have enough servers and they didn't have enough money. So they had to rewrite the data store for Facebook so that we would be able to support more users with the same number of servers. And the company just stayed there and focused. And there's a really good example in the Facebook effect, the Kirkpatrick book, which I don't know if you guys have read. It's very good if you want to know about the early days of Facebook, where he talks about how we went into different colleges. And we would launch in every college within 50 miles of one where there was a successful competitor, win in all of those colleges, and then launch in the college in the center to compete. These were not strategies that a growth team came up with. These were strategies that Mark came up with and Dustin came up with and the leadership of the company came up with way before we had a team called marketing or growth. And one thing that I see very, very regularly is CEOs dump the responsibility for growth onto some person who doesn't know that much about what's in their heart about the company, what is their goal for the company, and the company isn't ready to hire a growth team. In the early days of most companies, Series A, Series B, when you have funding, you have some level of product market fit, the only thing you should be focused on is growing what matters for your business, and that means it's the CEO's responsibility to drive growth. And you shouldn't be thinking about hiring a growth team until you have a good operating model of growth happening for your company, and then you need someone like me to come along and optimize the crap out of it. Something else that Mark did incredibly well that I can't overemphasize enough is he focused the company. And to this day, the first metric that he presents when we talk about our company metrics and what our goals are for the next half is connecting the world. How many monthly and daily active people will there be on Facebook? Every single company out there has a simple number they are trying to drive at the core of their company. And Chamath talked many times inside the team about simplifiers and complexifiers. And there are teams I've worked with who have literally had a square root in their metric because they felt they needed to properly normalize statistically the number they were going after. And they were trying to grow the number of people who had pages on Facebook. How the hell they got a square root in that metric, I have no idea, rather than just number of active page admins. But people get too clever about this stuff. Right? I come from a physics background. I love complicated metrics that are hard to measure and require lasers. The core metric for Facebook is monthly active people. How do we get everyone in the world connected? Our mission is to make the world more open and connected. To do that, we need the world on Facebook. We could have how many connections as a metric. We could have how much revenue we generate as a metric. We could have so many different metrics and we focused on that one metric, and it makes a big difference because if you don't have a clear guiding North Star of a metric you are trying to get to, lots of people can do work that they feel is good for your company, and they can all be right, but they're not all aligned. So one person might be saying, the thing we need to keep our company alive, the thing we need for Facebook to be successful, the thing we need for Airbnb to be successful, Uber to be successful is revenue. Right? We need money, because without money, we're going to burn through the cash we have in the bank, and we are going to be out of here. And they're absolutely right. Someone else might be saying, our mission is to connect the world. We need to get everyone friends. Someone else might be saying, if you're Airbnb, we need to have the maximum nights booked. We need to get hotels on this platform so we can have more different venues that people can go after. But the fact of the matter is, all of those people are right. And if the company doesn't have a guiding North Star metric, this is cool, it's a North Star, and then the thing's going around, it's very cool. If the company doesn't have a guiding North Star metric to go after, everyone who's right will be pulling in different directions, and the entire company will go nowhere. And it will go nowhere, and it will fight itself. And so Mark had a drumbeat. MAP, 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 and now DAP, 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 DAP. Monthly active people, daily active people. One single metric, one single thing the whole company focuses on. So the CEO is the growth person until you have solid growth that you understand, and then you can put a team against it to optimize it. Or you've reached a scale where you can't do it yourself. And you need a clear metric so you can align the entire company behind you to all be driving in that one direction.